moment. And that obviously helps me. Are we only live right now? Is that possible?
I'm wondering if we were talking this whole time and not even live.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
I have my sisters watching. I could see if they messaged anything to see if we weren't live this whole time.
Okay, well, let's just recap. It's always beautiful to introduce ourselves again.
We'll start again. Okay.
Welcome to Navigating Parenthood with myself, Sara Gita Soble, Relationshift founder, and Mussi Diskin, NHA Parenting coach and trainer. This is one of my favorite topics because it is such a big source of contention in marriage. And there's so much at stake with raising our children, and there's so much that we want for them, and we're ready to give anything for them. So to have that come between the mother and the father of these children can be really hard and really messy for the whole family. So we're here to discuss together what are the common challenges that parents face in wanting to raise children that are emotionally healthy and connected with them, and how to address that. Yeah. So Mussi was sharing with us a little bit about her parenting journey, and I'm just going to step us into the next question, if that's okay.
Well, if I could just say something about what you just said about why this is such an important topic. For so many people, the beginning of the end of their marriage is parenting, because two adults living together is one thing and it's all la, la, la. But then a kid comes in the picture and all of a sudden you don't know who you love more. I can't speak for everyone, but I know this is my story. I know this is a lot of other women's story. You don't know who you love more. You care about your husband and you're committed to the marriage, but there's this baby that needs you. And men sometimes have a different way of prioritizing things. And it doesn't feel like they prioritize the baby the way that you feel your mama bear heart wants to. And so for so many people, not only is this a hot topic, but it is the topic, because it is the beginning of the end, or the beginning of really hard times, hopefully not the end. Or the reason why someone would seek out Sara Gita Soble in Relationshift, because everything was fine until there was this third wheel, so to speak, and that's hard. So to figure out and navigate, and parenting is hard on its own. You don't also navigating your relationship on top of that is like a lot. So anyway, yes, very good topic. I'm glad we're here.
Yeah. Well said. So relatable. So what has been your experience with relationships so far that has you excited to come here and discuss these challenges?
Good question. Well, shout out to my sister, Frady Gerlitsky, who is a relationship coach. I'm sure they're all wonderful, but my experience is with her, and she's amazing. And I'm so grateful she's my sister. I have 24/7 access to relationships coach. It's pretty lucky. But yeah, I will say that what I just shared, like, was a very long time ago, 11 years ago, but probably since then, there was contention and resentment around parenting and around just like the split of responsibility and styles. And because I'm this, know-it-all preschool teacher, and then put on top of that, nurtured heart expert, like, oh, I know how things should be with kids. And like, what does he know? He barely knows how to hold the baby. Like, there was a lot of like I could say it now, lack of respect, lack of trust, me taking charge, me controlling him and everything. And, that doesn't, when you have a really masculine man, that doesn't really go very well. Some of you might know. Didn't go well for me. What can I say? And actually, I'll say that, like, when I was pregnant with this last baby, she's 2 years old, Kanina, and she's such a bracha. But when I was pregnant with her, I have a 5-year gap from her to the baby before that. And when I was pregnant with her, I was noticing that I really didn't want to do this baby. Like, with the baby before, we're live to who knows how many people, but who cares? This is me. I just say it all.
What? The vulnerability to just share authentically is so special. I love it. I'm like,
it's almost like a filter that I wasn't created with, but I'm so glad, because I know it helps people. So I'm so glad. With my baby, who the 5-year before baby, right? The last one before this last one. There was a huge rift between my husband and I, more so than the earlier babies, there was something that happened that I like sort of like owned the baby and took on the baby, and like it was my baby and it wasn't his baby. And actually for many years he didn't really have a relationship with this baby, and it was so hard to admit that it was so much me. And I'm glad that I've forgiven myself, and also that we're not there anymore, because that was very hard to see. But when this baby came along 5 years later, I wanted it to be a united thing. I had already kind of been very like aware of stuff. Frady was taking the course, and I was listening to the Laura Doyle Empowered Wife podcast, which I know you add on so many layers and take this to a whole new plane, thank God. But that kind of already gave me some idea of where I was, upside down in my relationship. I really wanted it to be different. And so I really, in that pregnancy, was just like so desperate to I even just birth. I just wanted birth. Like with my other babies, I felt so alone in the birth, and it was all my doing, but I didn't know that. And like, I wanted him to know, I wanted to do it together. It's our baby, right? It's our baby. Like, so what that it's in my body? It's not my baby. So anyway, that process of really just desiring that and leaning into it and talking to Frady and really like processing the fears, processing why I didn't trust him, going back to those first days with my first baby when I just decided that I was the better parent and I knew better. Really, we unlocked some stuff, and I really leaned into trust. And oh gosh, it's hard, but I really, with everything, and it's having a baby is a really big but perfect time, because you have to trust your husband with the other kids while you're having this baby, and then you have to trust your husband with your own stuff, like that you're not ruining the marriage by being hormonal and all the things, and just the whole thing. And it was so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I cannot tell you, this baby was a bracha in a million ways, and just as a bracha for just being her. But the closeness in my relationship, and like since then, and oh my gosh, the difference, the way my husband loves this baby and is connected to this baby, it's the sweetest thing. I can't even tell you. The world stops when she walks in the room. Like, his world stops. He'll do anything for her. None of us can get his attention the way she can. And it's 2 years in. It's not just the first month, it's 2 years in, and it's still to that level. And it's the sweetest thing. It's the most beautiful thing. And it breaks my heart to know that, like, this is the father that he always was. Like, this is how the world stops for his kids. And like, I guess I can say, I'm just so grateful that I'm not in the way anymore. I'm so grateful that I'm not in the way anymore.
Yeah.
So relationship absolutely is everything to me. It's my everyday. Frady's, again, like on my speed dial, right? Like every day.
Love that. Yeah. So relatable. I can so relate to, being a girl in a large family, and knowing what to do with the baby, and knowing what to do with the little kids, and knowing what to do as they grow older, and just taking it all on without even realizing that we're taking it on, and crowding him out, and then like looking around and being like, hey, why aren't you involved? Why aren't you supporting me? And not understanding what we had to do with it. So relatable. Yeah. And is this something that you feel is common in the couples that you work with?
It's a good question. I don't very much get into I generally work with only one parent. There's a few parents that come together, but when they come together, and it's the most beautiful thing. I have to tell you, I'm so in awe of the couples that come together. It's like both people on board. It's not my experience, and it's not common in my experience with others. And it's just so beautiful when a mother and father are both that committed and connected and on board to come for their kids together. Mostly I'm dealing with either the father by himself or the mother by herself. And very often without the spouse involved. And I'm not unpacking all of that. Like, that's not at all where I'm going. I'm focusing on them and their parenting and what they want to see with their kid. And I'm very clear in like my opinion that kids are very, very, very able to adapt to situations, and they know they're adults, and they know what to expect from their adults, and they'll adapt. So if daddy's one way and mommy's the other way, it's totally going to work for them. It's the fear that I have that it's not going to work for them that often makes it not work for them. But like, they're good. they'll be the way they are with him and the way they are with me, and it's fine. I can let that go. So my concern really when I'm working with clients is that I'm helping them kind of access who they want to be and who they are in their parenting, and I'm leaving the spouse out of it. And I'm encouraging them to leave the spouse out of it as far as their choices and as far as their values, because it's not my thing. So, I love that in my marriage, I've learned to respect my husband's mode of parenting, not only in action, like, stopping myself from saying something, from criticizing because I don't want to criticize, but actually valuing and loving his place in our family and his place in my children's life, even though it's not nurtured heart all the time. And it's sometimes very not nurtured heart. And for that to be okay for me to actually respect that. But to be honest, when I'm with my clients, I'm not even going there. It's not my field. Yes, I have referred people to Frady. And when they come in, when it's all about the spouse, I'm like, okay, I hear you. I love that you're seeing the dynamic in your marriage. I'll tell you what works for me.
Yeah.
I'll get some.
Yeah, and that's great. That's one of the second relationship principle is recognizing our circles of ownership. What are my responsibilities? I'm responsible for what's in my domain, and my spouse is responsible for what is in his domain, and learning how to differentiate where I end and he begins. It is such a key core part of our relationships. Yeah. So often we think we're doing this together, so therefore I'm responsible now really for both of us. But the truth is that is just exhausting.
Or we're doing it together, so it should look my way, which is also exhausting and a great way to create chill and bias problems. If you're looking for one, I recommend it. If you're looking for problems, I had this epiphany one day, and it was like almost so humbling that these are my husband's kids as much as they're mine, and he's their father. Like forever, he's their father. Like even God forbid I should get divorced, and I don't plan on that happening, but God forbid that should ever happen, he'll still be their father. Like it's not something that I have any say in. Mm-hmm. Like maybe I had a say, but now I don't. Too late. He's theirs. And they should have a father. They deserve to have a father. They deserve to have the relationship with their father forever. And it should be their way. It's none of my business. Like it is none of my business. And I was like, wow, that is humbling. Ouch.
Yes.
But now I get to get out of the way and watch that happen, and watch them have that relationship with their father, and watch them have those conversations, and watch him lean into them and watch them lean into him. And and why would I even want all the responsibility? I love that when he comes home, I could go and do whatever I want, or just sit on the couch and put my feet up and they're all running to him. Like it's so nice that I don't have to be the only parent. I hated being the only parent, Like it used to be that they would walk past him to come knock on the door when I'm in the bathroom to get me. Like, hey, Tati's on the couch, right? I'm sure a lot of people relate to that. But it's so nice that they can go to him now. Like, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. It sounds like you really opened up so many beautiful things in your relationship.
Thank you for your part in that.
Yeah, pleasure, honor. And I love the way that you brought out another one of our relationship principles, which is the father is indispensable. And so many times we think, like, for the sake of my child, I'll do anything. I'll divorce him because he's hurting them, not realizing that he's part of them, right? We can't just go ahead and amputate a limb. And the way that Tanya, the primary book of Hasidus, describes it is that the father's connection to the child spans from his brain matter all the way down to his toenails. So our child's father is just as much a part of them as we are. And what they bring is just as important as what we bring. And so important to recognize. Now, what I find very often is that we, as women, we don't recognize what our husband brings because we are so caught up in our feminine paradigm, what I call like feminine tunnel vision, that this is it doesn't even feel like my way, your way. It feels like the way. It feels very right. But that's because we're women. And as women, we are built differently than men are. And unless we take the time to learn about it and recognize what are the male strengths, what is he bringing, we would have a very hard time identifying what exactly he's contributing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a blessing that we're good at different things. Then our kids get both of their needs, met. And it's good that we're so good at what we do to the point that we only know our way. But that's all we need to know. We don't need to know his way. It's okay. We can let him have it. I think about like the security that my husband brings to me. Like even just like in a very sort of external maybe way of just like there's a man in the house and he's big and he's strong and he's resourceful and he's smart and he can solve problems and he knows how to figure stuff out that I can't. And like I don't want to think about numbers and I don't know how to think about numbers and I don't know how to figure out the website and I don't know how to, and he does. And when he's home, he'll fight a robber, like there's a security of like this big, strong, smart, confident leader man, even to me as a wife, and I'm an adult. And I like having that. And like, if I step in the way and make me the parent body and remove him from the equation, then I'm taking that away from my kids because that's not me. I'm not that. Even I love that about my husband. Like for me, what am I? I am love and I am warmth and I am giving and I am yes. And that's, I'm so happy for my kids that they have that unconditional love and that they have that warmth and have all the nurtured heart in the world. And it's so good for their inner wealth. And I see them blossoming and it's so beautiful. But like, don't I want them to feel like no matter what, there's like their Tati could come beat up anybody who starts up with them because their Tati's so strong. Like I remember feeling that about my father. Like, don't start up with me. My Tati could pick you up with his pinky, like just that like security of having this like man who's going to like stop the entire world for them because he's that strong and he's that big and that secure. And that's only one aspect. But for me, I love it. So I want them to have it. He's their father. They do have him anyways. He's here.
Yeah. And I think this piece that you're bringing up, the strength, the male strength is so important because we often get scared, right? That strength or that aggression that has us feeling safer at night when he's home is that same strength or aggression that when directed towards a child could feel really wrong and really scary. And yet to recognize that when a man is respected, he will establish the boundaries of his own strength. And to recognize that aggression is actually a source of security and a source of support. And that if I can respect, right, his relationship, recognize what he's bringing, then he will establish those boundaries for himself.
I feel like you said something so deep right there that needs so much unpacking because that's like a lot in that. Like the whole like aggression is really the establishing and of his borders or however you said it, boundaries, and that like if that's respected, wow, that's just really deep. Go back and listen to the recording, people.
Yeah. Do you want to unpack it a little bit here?
Let's. For me, this is like a free session with you. Like I'm so excited that I'm on the call with you. And everyone else gets to listen. Lucky.
Yeah. I remember for myself, if a child would get looking at my husband interacting with a child and thinking like, oh my gosh, like he's, raising his voice or he's, there's a interaction happening that feels so awful. Like, well, how's she going to walk away from this? And then, shutting that down, all those years where I was shutting that down, stepping into the room and taking over as soon as I felt like he wasn't handling something right, or I could handle this better, or let me just, let me help him out. And then the process of learning how to respect his aggression, and that receptivity alone is going to allow him to feel out the boundaries of his strength. And then turning around and recognizing, and like you said before, it's very scary. It's a scary process to really begin to open our eyes to what our husband is bringing, especially when it's very different. But turning around and seeing that, this particular child could, once I saw her, her resistance rising, like I would bow out to keep the peace, whereas my husband didn't, right? And then how their relationship blossomed and she became so much more secure inside to know that she cannot, uh, cow her parents, into submission, but we've got her. And that's such an important thing for a child to feel.
Yeah. I feel like you said that really well, that first piece about how if I step in to protect my kid from this perceived threat of their father's aggression, I am not allowing him to have the experience of feeling out his own aggression and deciding for himself, what that's going to look like and how that's going to look. And that feels so true on so many levels for all of us, for our kids. Like, when we control our kids too much, they can't. I remember learning in child development, like if you when you're navigating your kids climbing, when they're super little, let them climb. Don't tell them how high to climb. They won't climb higher than they can. They won't do something that their bodies can't handle. And if you trust them, they will learn to trust that knowing, and they won't forget about that knowing. But if you manage it for them and tell them when to stop because it's too high and where to go because it's safe, their brain will, just because it's extra, they don't need it, turn off that knowing. And then they're really not safe, because then they're older and their friend tells them to take a risk and they take the risk and they don't have that inner voice telling them not to, because it was shut off so many years ago, because you're protecting them. You're doing it for them. So they don't need to think. They don't need to know. And I will tell you, I have a very, very, very risk-taking son who is a huge climber and huge jumper, and he says no to friends. And he will do crazy things that to you look totally dangerous, but he knows his limits. He does. And he has not broken a bone. And you would think he would, because he's so, ask my sisters, he's so risky, but he knows his limits. And it blows me away every time. I do it out of like forcing myself to believe and trust. And then he proves it because he doesn't get hurt. It's just crazy. So it's the same thing for anything. You can't swim out of water. Like, let him play with. You think I'm a perfect mother? No, I make mistakes. My kids react to that. And I go, ooh, maybe I don't want to do that again. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe I need to ask myself what's going on here. If I'm just running in and saving the day, first of all, only a very, 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 very humble and, I don't know, tzaddik man would continue to try. Like, why? Why should he continue trying? But even if he did continue trying, there's no sense of building the relationship between the two parts, having the kid say, I don't like that, having him respond to that, hear that, just navigating that, figuring it out. Like, I have to tell you, my daughter she didn't want to share something emotional with my husband, and I'm not going to get in the way anymore. So I was like, I hear you. I think that he would probably love to hear it. And, we can talk it over first if you want, but like, I think he would, I think he would want to hear it. I think that, I know it's scary. I know it's hard. I hear you. I validated her feelings, but I was like, yeah, I know how much he loves you. Like, and she did. She went and she told him, and she was crying, and he totally heard her and listened and told her that he always wants her to come tell him things, and he's always available. And he was so soft. And it was just, that would have never happened if I would have believed that he wouldn't know how to navigate her intense emotions, which was a belief I used to have.
Yeah.
If I would have tried to protect that, or gone in and told him, she's feeling like this and you really have to be careful, because I would have prevented the two of them from ever having that intimacy, and for her to know that her father will always be there for her. Like,
absolutely. That must have been quite a journey to trust him to handle her intensely.
Oh my gosh. And it's still a journey, but I'm getting that, because I'm doing the work, I'm seeing the evidence. And once you have the evidence, it just, then it motivates you to keep going. And having sisters who are talking about it all day and helping you too, that also helps.
Yeah. That's so
and it's
beautiful.
really very aligned with everything else I believe. I mean, I always say, nurture heart for kids is relationship for husbands. It's like the same basis. It's the same essence, the essence of truly seeing and first I believe it, but if I really believe it, I look until I find it and appreciate it authentically, the value of another person, and trust that it's there and see it and then appreciate it and then receive it and love it and know that like I'm the luckiest mother because I have the best kids, like because I know them, because I see them that way, because and like I'm the luckiest wife because I have the most amazing husband because I can see him. But those eyes, to be able to look for that, it's the same skills, it's the same shift, it's the same work, you know.
It's a beautiful way how to see another person.
Yeah.
Really, really deeply see their value and their greatness, and something that we often can just completely miss. Yeah. Was something I wanted to share in what you said, but I'm forgetting, so we'll just move on.
Have a new moment, a new now.
Have a new moment. Yeah. So, this is what I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I love how you invited your daughter to go back to her father. That's something that we encourage parents a lot of time, women, mothers, a lot of times, some of the evidence that a woman comes with that her husband is not capable is that her children are complaining to her also, and the things that her children complain about and the intensity of their emotions. So what we look at is a lot of times our children are reflecting us, since they don't want to betray their mother who loves them. They're caught between, allegiance to their mother and allegiance to their father and their natural feelings for their father. So it's a very, very confusing place for a child to be. So oftentimes they'll come to the mother with, an enormous load of complaints against their father. And some of them seem really valid and seem really scary. And it is such a, it's so tempting. It feels so urgent to go and bring it to the father and present it properly and get him to treat the child differently or say or do or fix something up. But instead to really respect their relationship, their independent relationship. And as I do my own work in seeing the value in my husband and opening space for him, clearing my judgments of him and recognizing what he's contributing and him really as a contribution, then my children will sense that also. And these words of, I think your father would really want to know about that. That's something that your father would really want to know from you. And oftentimes a child will say, no, he doesn't. He's going to say this and this and this. He's going to, shut me down. He's going to just laugh at me, or he's going to yell at me, and maybe that was their experience in the past. And so then it's even more scary. But to then ask the child, would you like some help? And what I would do with the mother to do with her child is practice. Here's how you approach your father. Here's how we want to share what's hurting us. We always share what's hurting us in the context of connection. Trust the connection is a very fundamental principle, where instead of looking at this hurt as defining our relationship, like you hurt me and therefore, you must be awful, because if you would love me, you would never do such a thing to me. We want to recognize that trusting the connection, putting our hurt in the context of that connection, will actually allow us to connect and to overcome whatever it is that's hurting. One example I often bring is, imagine you go to put your child to sleep, and she says, "Mommy, you never spend time with me, and you're not here for me, and you're so busy with everybody else, or and you don't care about me." So how does the mother feel, right? It's exhausting. As much as you want to be there for your child, as much as you're going to, perhaps spend some extra time with that child, maybe take them out or whatever it is that you're hearing that they're sharing, it is exhausting. As opposed to a child who comes and says, "Mommy, I know you love me so much, and you're there for me, and I love you, Mommy, and I'm really missing you, and it's been so long since we spent time together." Like how eager would you be to spend more time with that child? So in our relationships, this trusting connection builds the connection. Sharing a hurt in that context of connection makes all the difference between, a drain and between something that you can actually repair and progress with. So the way I would invite a mother to help their child would be first to say exactly that to their child. I think that sounds like something that Tati would really want to know about. And when the child protests, to say, would you like some help? And then we go through these processes. Let's set the context of connection. Okay. You know, where can you see that? What can you acknowledge in Tati that will acknowledge your connection with him and his care for you? And then the child might have some hard time. You might want to help them, you know, and then maybe they'll write it down. And then you say, okay, now what is it that's hurting you? And you help them get it out, maybe also on paper. And then the last piece, instead of anticipating a disconnect or a negative reaction, we're going to anticipate a just a appreciation for having listened and a positive reaction. So it might end off with, you know, thank you so much for listening to me or taking the time to hear what I'm feeling. You know, that structure of how do you help a child approach their parent when they're like lost is helpful.
That's super, super helpful. And I love how it's all charted out. And I also love how you're bringing the principles straight to the kids, because it's a very cool parallel with Nurtured Heart. Also, a lot of times people are like, but what about the siblings and what about the friends? And, you know, you are, you know, seeing the greatness of this kid and you aren't getting all triggered by him, but like his siblings are so angry at him and they're saying all these bad things about him or whatever. And I'm like, teach them Nurtured Heart. Like, teach them what's going on here. Help them understand energy, help them understand negativity, help them understand greatness. Like, you teach them the 3 stands. Let them practice the 3 stands on their siblings. Like, they're part of it too. Let them help you. Let them know, look, let's all work together to help this, you know, our sibling know that we see the greatness in them and that they're not a monster and that they are our best, you know, fun, exciting brother, whatever, you know, like inviting them in and just being authentic with them. And that's exactly what I hear you saying. Like, let's just say it as it is. Let's teach them. And what a gift to them for all of their future relationships, that they're being able to learn these skills to trust the connection of whoever they're talking about. I mean, even an employer, trust that they want you in their work. Trust that they don't you know, so many people will at work have this like idea that like at any minute they're going to be fired. If they say the wrong thing, they're going to be fired. No. Trust your boss that if they hired you, they want you there. Go over to them and appreciate, you know, that they hired you, appreciate that they value your work, appreciate that they see the talent in you, trust that it's there, and then go ahead and everything so much, and then appreciate them for listening. That's such an amazing tool for anywhere in life, but especially it does get very tricky with parenting. What my kids coming to me saying, well, I don't want to talk to daddy. I don't want to tell him or the opposite too, by the way. Like, I don't want to tell mommy, she's going to yell at me. You know, and giving them this tool. That was a very cool gift, I think, for everybody.
Yeah. Beautiful. Do you have any questions that you would love to address tonight?
I'm looking at the clock also, and I'm noticing that my babysitter is going to come marching in here with all my kids in a few minutes. So something specific that is, I think that the biggest thing is really this when I have such a strong sense, we talked about it, but maybe just to talk about it more, such a strong sense of right. Like, my kids, I believe in Nurtured Heart, or I believe in unconditional love. I believe in gentleness. I believe in whatever it is that you're believing in, you know, and like my husband is doing the opposite and it's ruining my kids. Like, how do I walk from there into seeing the value? Like, what's the value in my husband? Like, I can hear someone say this, right? What's the husband in my value slapping my kid? There's no value to that. It undoes everything I've worked so hard to do. Like, that's not the response. Can't you see the kid is hurting? Can't you see the kid is just expressing emotion? You know, like, now what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
That's like the most practical unpacking we could do, is to really help people know how to walk through that, walk away from that, walk towards the respect.
Yes. That experience of feeling like, oh my gosh, he's ruining this kid, or I'm doing everything positive that I'm trying to do, is so intense and is so scary. And I think the first piece to recognize here is how common that experience is. And a lot of it is due to not understanding the masculine and feminine paradigms. So I'll give you some examples. So you brought up slapping. I'm going to do that like after just a few more easier ones. But let's say the woman has a routine, right? She's putting her kids to sleep. She has a evening routine. And then the father comes in and he starts, playing with the kids or riling them up, or, brings home Nosh right when she's about to sit them down for supper. So there's all these a woman could feel like you are disrupting a healthy, nourishing meal, a healthy bedtime. Their whole next day, they're going to be crabby, or you're going to rile them up. And then I'm going to be left with all the putting them to bed and calming them down. So one of the things that we look at in the paradigms is that our souls and our bodies also reflect these 10 divine energies that Hashem used to create the world, called the spheres. And some of those energies are termed masculine and some of them are termed feminine. Now, the masculine energies are chesed, chachma, chesed, and netzach. And the feminine energies are bina, gvura, and haid. So there's also another way that they're divided, but just for our conversation tonight, we're just going to focus on those. So chachma, chesed, and netzach is very interesting. A lot of times when I share this piece, women say, but wait, aren't those feminine qualities? But you'll see they're very different. So chachma is that flash of insight, it's that leadership, it's that vision. Chesed is love, it's kindness, it's generosity, it's exuberance. It's like an outward moving energy.
It's providing.
And netzach is endurance or commitment, overcoming, conquest, competition. So these qualities are directly juxtaposed to the feminine qualities, whereas the feminine qualities are bina, gevura, and haid. Bina is understanding one thing from another. It's details, it's analytical, it's breaking things down. Gevura is routine, is structure, routine, it's fear, it's all inward moving of an energy. Boundaries, structure, and there's a certain strength to that. And then the last one is haid. Haid is the feminine nurture. This is where haid is humbleness, right? Humility, the ability to get down to a child's level, where he's at, see him where he's at. It's also acknowledging. That's a feminine strength, which I believe is a big part of nurtured heart. It's also the beautifying, right? We beautify our homes, we beautify ourselves, we beautify our children. So these qualities often contradict each other, like directly. So, the father will come in, chesed, playing with the kids, and the woman will feel gevura, structure is the real contribution to our children, right? But within these divine energies, both are equally necessary. So, or another example would be, haid and netzach. A father might push his child to, no, you can do better than that, or or competition, or conquest, or bribing, or punishing. And the woman is like, wait a second, haid. He just walked in from school. Meet him where he's at. He needs a hug. He needs to be understood. He had a hard day. Let me give him something to eat. And the two clash again and again. But what happens is the way that these energies are set up, they're actually set up like our body. Chesed is to the right, gevura is to the left, and netzach and haid also are right and left. The middle energies that connect the two are tiferes and yesod, which means that when das, tiferes, and yesod. Das is an energy of connection, but it's a connection that is, it's often used as a euphemism for intimacy. So it's a connection of like deeply knowing, like deeply connecting to my knowledge. So when I deeply connect to the value inherent in my husband's paradigm, that brings to a tiferes. Tiferes is where both of our energies blend, not in a way where they overwhelm each other or they mix, but in a way that both of them are distinct. And that brings to Yesod, which literally means foundation. It supports the foundation of our relationship and the foundation of what we want our children to gain, what we want our children to have as they develop into human beings. So just to make that practical, the husband walks in, the house, and he riles up the kids and plays. When the woman relaxes, right, and celebrates the fact that he's playing with them, she's going to notice that his play will support her routine, which means that his play will give the children that expansiveness that will actually allow them to settle down better and go to sleep. And what's the purpose of the sleep at the end of the day, right? It's a happy, well-balanced child that will directly contribute to them. So she can, like you mentioned in the beginning, I don't know if anyone caught it, but go back and listen to it if you didn't, how you mentioned how he walks in, you can go and relax and do your thing, right? You don't have to stand there and try to keep the structure. By relaxing and allowing him to contribute to the structure, by bringing his contribution, we can, take some moments to relax, let him finish at bedtime, or even if you come and finish at bedtime, your space inside, when you're like open and receptive, it'll be a much calmer bedtime. Believe it or not, it feels so counterintuitive, but this is what shows up.
I have lived experience to support that. Sara Gita, my kids are walking in. I do have to go, and I want to close in a way that feels not chaotic for me. I think that what you're saying is so valuable. I personally would love if you continue talking, because I want to hear those other examples, and I know I could watch the recording. I don't know how you feel about talking without my face in the screen, but I am going to have to at least mute and shut off my camera for now. But thank you for this wonderful conversation and the honor of being on here with you and your incredible insight in general for all of our lives and relationships. You're really setting up like the future of Klal Yisrael for some really beautiful generations.
Thank you, Mussi. And thank you for joining tonight and bringing your real experience and your insight. It's so beautiful and so nurturing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So much more to say. Kids. We'll have to have other opportunities.
Yes, B'ezras Hashem. Okay. All right, enjoy your kids, and I'm just going to address some of the questions that were sent to me, and I'll just give the last couple examples. So the other example we were looking at was the hide and the netzach, right? Pushing a child as opposed to meeting them where they're at. Again, when we relax and realize that in a healthy, successful adult, you need both things. You need the nurture that meets you where you're at, and you also need the ability to push through and keep to a standard or overcome your feelings at that moment. So if you think about it, like if every time we were experiencing something, we would shut down and drop all our responsibilities, that wouldn't be balanced. And if we never recognized our feelings and we always pushed through without having that time to nurture our inner world, then that also wouldn't be balanced. So what the mother brings and what the father brings are equally important. So we want to honor what we bring to the table, that nurture, and we want to honor what he brings to that table, that striving, that pushing, that overcoming. And what that looks like is, how do we know which one do I honor in that moment? Well, if he's stepping in with his contribution, then I want to relax and trust that process, which means that maybe I need to leave the room. Maybe I need to take myself on a little walk or a breather, or go take a drink in the kitchen to separate myself from hovering over that interaction and trust that the child will be okay. That includes trusting that if he chooses to send a child to a room and that's not in my parenting toolbox, but that's what he's doing, to notice and learn to turn inwards when it comes to my fears. What am I afraid of, right? A child sitting in a comfortable, well-lit room, what exactly am I afraid of? So instead of needing to rescue that child and go sit in that room with the child so they don't feel abandoned or emotionally, emotionally dismissed, we want to recognize that the ability to be resilient and face their emotions and sit there and listen and follow through on what the father said is really important for their development too. So these are just some examples of where our different paradigms come into play and how crucial it is to honor both of them. I'm going to open up some of the questions that were sent here. Give me a moment as I pull it up. Okay. So here are some questions that were sent in. And if any of you have a question, please post it in the chat. I would love to see. What do you do when your husband contradicts something you just told your kids that they need to do? Yeah. So this has a lot of nuances. One of the limitations of just answering a question on the screen is that I'm not taking into account your specific situation and what it was that you said, what it was that he said. But in general, the idea, if I tell my children something and my husband says something else, learning how to respect and receive that is so important. So my kids are clear that if mommy says something and Tati says something, what Tati says goes. Now, what that doesn't mean is that I'm not honored. Okay. A lot of times we hear that and we think like, oh no, like, is my voice not honored? Am I not, am I not honoring myself? Am I not as valuable? Is what I say not as valid, or I feel so disrespected? And we want to recognize that there's a hierarchy in authority that is such a relief to lean into instead of resist. When children know who's in charge, they can relax, right? Like if you're in a classroom with a teacher and the children know that teacher is in charge, right? They can relax, they can listen, they can learn. And above that teacher is the principal. So while my husband and I are side by side as mother and father, to our children, there's a hierarchy. So the father is the leader. And when we respect him as the leader, when we trust his direction, even if it feels counterintuitive, even if it contradicts what I'm saying right now, what actually happens is that leadership supports the backbone of our whole family. So I would invite you to experiment with what is it that you're afraid of, and what would open up for you to actually trust him as the last word, and also to bring what you bring as a parent, as a mother, and to trust him to bring what he brings as a father. How do we get on the same page when we have very different parenting styles? Okay, this is a great question. And the simple answer is you don't. We don't get on the same page. And that's the beauty. That's actually the beauty of having both a mother and a father. If we were on the same page, if we had the same style, then what are we bringing? Sometimes it could feel, again, very counterintuitive to trust what he's bringing, but and it's a process and it's scary, but ultimately that's very positive. And our children can really benefit, again, from the resilience that comes from different parenting styles. One thing that I notice is very crippling to children as they grow is a fragileness, if I'm saying that right, fragility, where they need to be spoken in a certain way, or later when it comes to their marriage relationships, they can interpret an interaction that might be not pleasant, but they can interpret it or experience it as abusive when it's not genuine abuse. And I believe that this starts from when we're children, when we need our children to be spoken to in a very specific way. And later on, it doesn't allow them to trust the context of love, where not always is someone going to treat you exactly perfectly right. But if we trust the greater context of the person, we can communicate, we can manage, we can have a relationship. And again, I'm referring to like just regular parenting differences, um, within a spectrum of things you might come across: a parent raising a voice, or a parent, being maybe using strength or aggression, but not something that is chas v'shalom, where there's a risk of loss of life or limb. Okay, we're talking within like a regular range. Who says that shalom bias is more important than good parenting? Great question. Good parenting includes shalom bias. There's no such thing as good parenting that simultaneously breaks down our shalom bias. What am I teaching my children? In fact, this was one of the biggest awarenesses that for myself in my own journey as a mother, which was, I was so wanting my children to develop good midas. I'm so wanting my children to develop, as mentioned, as healthy in all ways, spiritually, physically, emotionally. But what am I modeling? Shalom bias is built on my midas. So if I'm modeling a lack of midas towards my husband, a lack of shalom bias with my husband, a lack of that interpersonal skill, lack of the ability to connect and trust our connection and handle our relationship, well, that is the foundation for their own development. Another piece that's super important regarding our shalom bias is that the basis for my child's inner security is their parents' relationship. Parents are it's kind of like the water for a fish that a fish swims in. If the atmosphere in my home is polluted, then those toxins transfer to the fish that are swimming in that water. So the same thing in our relationship. The relationship between myself and my husband is the security for my child's whole emotional well-being. So that is an absolutely fundamental number one part of our parenting. It's not separate. I feel like I can't trust my husband with the kids. He doesn't understand their needs. Yeah, this is a scary one. And also so relatable. What I would invite you to explore is, again, to explore your fear. Like, what is the worst case scenario that you are worried about when he's handling the kids? Very often we feel like we can't trust our husbands with the kids, but if we really look at it, is he liable to let them die? Right? Like, what is our end vision of what he's capable of, or to what degree is he going to neglect them to? And when we really, really examine our fear, we often will recognize that the fear may really be discomfort. It might be uncomfortable for the children. They might be used to your style. They might be used to your dinner. You may feel you understand their needs more, but he is contributing something different, which is, a mother prepares nourishing meals, but, the father, the night that the father makes dinner, or puts out the hot dogs or whatever it is that he's giving to them, is a memory and is a connection between the two. So although he may not understand their needs like you do, he understands their needs from the point of view of a father. And that is equally as important and is equally a need of theirs, to have a father. What if it's the other way around? My husband doesn't trust the way that I parent. Okay, so this has a lot of there's a lot to this one as well. But what I would like to open up here is the capacity to hear his LCI. LCI stands for his love, care, or intention. Instead of hearing his words as a form of control, like he's trying to control me or he doesn't trust me or my parenting, we want to hear his concern, the love, the care, or the intention, the LCI beneath that concern. And instead of responding to his concern from a place of do or don't, right? Like, oh, now I have to do what he says, or now I have to explain myself. We want to respond to what he's bringing, just to the love, just to the care, or the intention beneath it. So something along the lines of, and again, this takes work to separate, and I'm kind of just throwing it out here. But the ability to trust your connection, right? Trust his care and hear his concern as care for the child. So when he brings something up about the way that you're parenting, instead of getting defensive or instead of trying to explain or instead of, answering him back or criticizing him back, we want to reflect. You really care about our children, right? I hear you really care about, Mendy getting the support he needs, or Sari getting the structure she needs to succeed, or this one doing well in school, or this one getting enough sleep, or this one feeling seen, or whatever it is that he is commenting about. So what is the love, the care, the intention behind those words? And just respond to that instead of the actual criticism. Okay, and lastly, what if your husband is parenting in a harmful way that will cause trauma to your children? So I would invite you to bring this to a coaching session. The reason being is that there are so many nuances and there's such a range of what we consider harmful and what's bringing trauma to our children. But I want to just assure you that there is an answer and there is a way through it. And my hope for you is that once you begin to recognize your husband as a valuable part of your children's lives and really give him the space to parent without your judgment in the picture, that not only will you discover that your husband is not traumatizing them, but you'll discover that a beautiful relationship and a beautiful support will blossom. All right. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I would love to hear your feedback. Feel free to reach out to me or to anyone on our team. For further information, please look us up on createrelationship.com. And we'd love to hear from you. We also have a membership opportunity where you can bring your challenges around parenting together with your husband. There's a membership opportunity to sign up for where there's a weekly group coaching where you can get coaching for a very nominal fee, and would love to see you there. And wishing all of you so much hatzlacha as parents and as couples. Have a wonderful night.